All right, what's up, everybody? Um, Making another book video. I wanted to make one for a while, but about the last month or so, I've been kind of in a bit of a reading slump, so I haven't been really motivated to read or to make videos about books. Um, but the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been kind of getting back into it. Um, so I figured I wanted to do this last month, but I never got around to it. And I also, like I said, I was in a reading slump, but I wanted to do a kind of halfway point of the year of where I'm at with reading, like how many books I've read this year so far. Not doing this to flex and say that I read more than everyone else did, um, but I just kind of wanted to go over all the books I've read so far this year. These are all the books. I don't remember how many. I want to say it was 15. I read 15 books. Well, 16 including Count of Monte Cristo, which I'm trying to finish this week, so I'm including it. I have like 100 pages, 150 pages left, so I'm trying to finish it before I go on vacation. So I guess we'll just get into it. All right. So the first one I read back in January was 1984 by George Orwell. I did talk about this, I believe, in that first video. I talked about reading books, getting into it. Like I said, I still do recommend this as one of the books you probably should start with, just because it's, I mean, it's relatively short. There's let's see, there's about 300 pages in the book. Um, Newer editions might be shorter because this is a little bit of a smaller edition. Um, but again, like the writing is very good, but it's relatively easier to understand. It's not super complex. But I definitely recommend this book as one of the books you start with. Doesn't necessarily need to be the book you start with, but um, not bad. But again, um, no one's doing any kind of spoilers here, so. But yeah, so this is the first book I read. I read this in about a week. Um, but yeah, this was part of the reason why I really got hooked on reading to begin with. Was I read this, so yeah. Um, the next book I decided to pick up and read was Animal Farm. Sorry, Animal Farm by George Orwell. This book is even shorter, and it's just as good. Actually, I think 1984 is a little bit better, but again, concepts and stuff in it, very obviously dystopian still, but very relative to the time when he wrote it, and even to now, especially now, which I think I got into a little bit about in that my first video I talked about reading and stuff. So and that is the only George Orwell I've read so far. I don't know too many other books. I think there's one other book I know. I just can't remember the name. But if there's any other George Orwell books you guys like that besides these two that you would recommend, just drop them in the comments because I'm certainly getting antsy to buy some more books. So next book I picked up, which I knew zero about. I never even heard of it. But then when I found out about it, I guess I realized it's a very, very popular book. The Alchemist. Um, Honestly, I would probably read it again. I was when I first read it, I read it in like 2 days. I read the whole book, and I was kind of sitting there after I finished it, and I was like, eh. But then as I was sitting on it after I read it, thinking about different parts of the story and his journey and stuff, I was like, it's actually a really good book. So another one that I also recommend as like a beginner getting into reading because again, the writing is not very super complex. The story is very good, the lesson is very good, but it's not very difficult to read. There's not a bunch of different crazy characters that are called different names, so it's very easy to understand the story, and it's not very long. Again, like this is probably yeah, not even 200 pages. So, and that's the third one I read, which is the oldest book I think I own, in terms of the story at least, is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a old story all the way down from I believe Babylonia or Syria. Could be wrong, but very old. It is, as of I think right now, probably the oldest story known that exists. Um, but yeah, it's not very long. Um, I believe the introduction in this version, the introduction of the book or the story is longer than the actual book or the story. Sorry. Um, yeah, I mean it's not even 100 pages. It's for it being a couple thousand years old. It's very easy to read and follow, which is not what I was expecting. Um, but yeah, it's just another kind of epic tale um, that obviously inspired probably pretty much everything since then in terms of like medieval style structured writings, movies, and stuff like that. You know, um, but yeah, very good book. I guess really it's a story. It's not really a book, but you know, it's still. All right. So the next book I read after that was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I know when I was reading it, at least a lot of people, like friends, family, whatever that saw it, they said that they had to read it for school. I never had to read it for school. This is my second Steinbeck I've read. The first one was The Pearl that I had to read for school. I think freshman or sophomore year. That was a pretty good book. I still have that. I probably will go back and read that again because it's relatively short. Like this one, I read this one in like 2 days. Same kind of thing as the other books. They were just very um well structured and very easy to you know follow along with the story. You don't have to worry about getting lost in like subplots or um side characters doing different stuff or different names because a lot of books where they have characters they also have different names for the characters that they call depending on who they're talking to, and it gets very confusing. But obviously this doesn't do that. Um, Again, I think a lot of John Steinbeck stuff's very similar like this from what I've heard, but it definitely is a very good depiction of what it was like being you know being working class during like the 30s and the during the Great Depression stuff. Um, so yeah, controversy over because some people don't necessarily agree with this person or what he's writing about. But I don't know if you can tell I got Mr. Che Guevara up there. But this is State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin. Um, Probably wouldn't have read it when I did. Probably would have read um, the Manifesto first, Communist Manifesto, which I do have and I do plan on reading later this year, probably after vacation. Because I didn't really realize that this pretty much is it's almost his version of the Communist Manifesto. He quotes a lot of quotes from Karl Marx and Engels, and he kind of um, agrees and also um, what's the word I'm thinking of? Critiques um, the Communist Manifesto. Um, yeah, this is also something again I would probably have to read again. I'd probably with philosophy books that I've a lot of the philosophy books I've DNF'd just because you know I'll have to really spend some time reading them because they're supposed to be hard. You know what I mean? They're supposed to make you think. And I think whenever I read them, I wasn't thinking in that mindset. I was treating it like a regular, just nonfiction or fiction, just like novel. And that's kind of how I treated it with this one too. So I definitely regret that. Um, I mean, the only thing I just regret about it is like the way I read it. I didn't gain a lot of the information of it, but at the same time, I also didn't read um, the Communist Manifesto first. So a lot of this was almost kind of confusing because I didn't know what I was expecting. But still a good book. Um, if you're into that kind of stuff, totally read it. It is it's very dense, so just take that with consideration. But whether you are for it, for that stuff or against it, still recommend reading it. It's definitely good. It's part of history. So All right. So the next book I read was Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Um, Same thing as The Alchemist. When I finished it, I didn't really love it the way everyone loves it because everyone talks about this book and The Alchemist too, like, oh, it's such a great book. And I didn't really get it. But again, after reading it and then just kind of sitting on it and thinking about it and then hearing about other people talking about it and remembering when I read it, I really like this book. This is a very good book. Again, also, I would probably reread this, not even to find other stuff that I didn't see initially, but just because it was a fun read. I would read it again just for fun. Um, you know, but yeah, kind of like one of those. It's a spiritual journey, pretty much is what it is. He wanted to find enlightenment, find nirvana, but instead of following um like a school or like Buddhist teachings, he kind of just was like, screw it. He went on his own and kind of found his own enlightenment through different real world experiences that he experienced throughout his life, and very good story. Um, but yeah, so so probably thinking about it. This is probably my favorite book I've read so far. This might be my favorite book that I've ever read. I haven't read a lot of books. These are the majority of the books I've read in my life. And that is The Stranger by Albert Camus. Sorry. Um, I've read this 3 times now. I originally had to read it for school, my junior year of high school, and then this was one of the first books I picked up after high school that I read on my own again. Um, and then whenever I got back into reading, like I said, beginning of this year, um, I wanted to go back and reread this. And I do have 2 other Camus books, Myth of Sisyphus, obviously, which is his most known book, and then I have another one I can't remember the name of, but those are 2 I definitely want to look into getting into reading some point this year. Um, I just like his writing, and I like his philosophy, so that's that one. All right. So another book that I would probably say is one of my favorite that I've ever read is Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. Um, I like Anthony Bourdain a lot. Um, Watched his show here and there growing up. Didn't know a whole lot about him. Um, and then I read this, and he's such a good dude. But yeah, um, no, it's kind of hard to describe because it's obviously an autobiography esque kind of book, but it's not really. Yeah, I guess it would be, but it is very yeah. The whole book itself is just very interesting. Um, I have some annotations on there, which most of the other books I've shown so far don't have a lot of crazy annotations. I do plan on making a video probably about that in the future. Just to talk about annotations, like why I do them, other process of why you would want to annotate something, underline something, because I'm to kind of get into that, but yeah, so Confidential, I spent a lot of time on this book. It took me a while to finish. Um, Not for any reason specifically. I think I just really enjoyed it, so I didn't want to, sit down and read like 100 pages here, 100 pages there, and be finished in like a couple days. So it did take me longer than probably it should have. Um, but again, I think I also started getting into reading slump around this time too because I was trying to read this, and um, I still had a lot of Count of Monte Cristo to get through, so that kind of was discouraging. So, but yeah, this is maybe if The Stranger number 2, this is probably number 3 or number 2 for me. Very good book. Next one's another philosophy book I read. This is Thomas or Saint Thomas More, Thomas More, you want to call him. Utopia. Um, Again, this is also kind of along the lines of um, it. It's not really communist, but it kind of is. It almost implies it in a way. Um, it was obviously written well before. This was written, I think, 300 years before the Communist Manifesto. I think it was written like 15 or 1600s. I can't remember. I could be completely wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure that's when this was written. Um, again, it's kind of they also talk about Plato's Republic, a lot of that stuff, that's another book I definitely want to try and get into, either this year or the beginning of next year, depending on where I'm at with reading. But but yeah, um, again, short book, very good book. Obviously it's fictional. They're talking about a utopia, like this distant land where I'm not gonna spoil it because I get into it, but it's obviously fiction, but it's still obviously a philosophy book. But yeah, pretty good book. Um, I don't know if I'd ever read it again. It was kind of whatever. Um, and I think if you talk about books about either communism or socialism, that kind of stuff, or just philosophy books in general, this book really doesn't get talked about that much. Kind of for a reason. It's not amazing. Um, with that being said, this is probably my least favorite that I've read so far this year. Um, not terrible book. I think if you're into philosophy or political science or anything, maybe read this. Not terrible read. It's also pretty quick. There's like 150 maybe. Let's see what we got. 130 pages. So, all right. The next one I read was Greta Thunberg. No one's too small to make a difference. Oopsies. So the next one I read was Greta Thunberg. Um, no one is too small to make a difference. Kind of forgot the name of it. Um, not really. It's just a compilation of all of her speeches from, I think it was from kind of when she first started getting some sort of spotlight. So it's 2018, and the last speech what it is from 2020. So again, another quick read, very good read. The only thing about this is just because they're just speeches, they get kind of repetitive because she talks about the same kind of stuff. But other than that, I mean, it's one of those things that's crazy to think about how most of these speeches you read them, you don't really assume that it's a 15-year-old girl who wrote it and was reading it to all these high up government officials talking about climate change, but it's very impressive. Um, and she's still out there doing, she's still being an activist out there now, which is amazing. So, but yeah, good read. Again, if you're into current events or climate change or the environment or whatever, totally recommend reading this. Definitely a good book to have. So yeah, and I read was again also probably another one of my favorite books I've read. Probably not all time, but probably one of my favorite ones that I've read so far this year. Is Fight the Oligarchy by Bernie Sanders. Again, another small book. Um, very easy to take with me traveling and going to work and going to my parents' house, stuff like that. But you know, quite a bit of annotations on this, even though it is a very small book. But yeah, he's got a good amount of books. I definitely plan on getting most of them, if not all of them. Um, but this was a very good book to start with because it's probably I think it's his newest book. Came out I think in 24. I want to say. Let's take a look. Uh, came out last year, 2025. So pretty updated with current events. He obviously critiques a lot of the current administration stuff and what they are. Well, I wouldn't say what they're doing, what they're destroying. Um, and critiquing I think APAC and a lot of ties with Israel and stuff. So I'm not gonna get too much into it. I don't want to get this video taken down. But definitely a good book. I think if you are on the left, especially if you are on the more socialist side, totally recommend this. Bernie Sanders is a great dude. Love this book. All right. Next one, which is the last political one, is the yeah, abolition of all political parties. Kind of read this one. Um, not very long. It's really just like a long essay. Um, but it's by Simone Weil. Weil. I'm not sure how you actually pronounce that. That is totally my mistake. I'm not mispronounce it. But there's a philosopher and activist. During this was written during um World War II. Um, I believe, yeah. So I believe this was written during World War II, kind of critiquing that kind of stuff. Um, I didn't get a whole lot from it. Not the biggest fan of it. Um, Maybe it was just too dense for me. I'm not too sure, but um, I think kind of critiquing the idea of obviously Nazi Germany, but also critiquing the Allied governments and stuff. Kind of the idea of like, yeah, they seem like the better version, but as time goes on, they might turn more fascist than staying as a democracy. I think that's kind of what I got from it. Could be completely wrong. You could totally correct me in the comments. But yeah, not terrible. But again, I think I just didn't get it. Might be too dumb. Not too sure. So, all right, down to the last two books that I've read. So this next one is the one I just finished recently, and then the next one is Count of Monte Cristo, which I am just about to finish. Probably by the time this video is up, it might be finished. I hope. So, next book is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Um, First Kurt Vonnegut book I've ever read. Absolutely amazing. Um, I have two more Kurt Vonnegut books on my shelf that are in preparation of being read within the next probably 2 months, I'm guessing. Um, I guess you'll see by December whenever I come back and make a full ranking of every book I've read so far this year, and we'll see how many more books I've read this year. But I'm making other videos before then. Just the next video is going to be kind of structured like this. When I talk about all the books I've read, will probably be in December or maybe January, and I'll be going over just um every book I've read. I'll rank them, probably like 1 out of 10 or something. I'll figure that out. But for now, this is what we're doing. But yeah, Slaughterhouse-Five. Um, and obviously it's an anti-war book based during World War II. Um, but follows this guy Billy Pilgrim in his kind of journey, his life journey through being in World War II, being prisoner of war, and then coming back to America, being he was an optometrist, I believe. Um, and he was kind of a very different individual, mentally at least. Um, and then there was an event where he was in a plane crash, and he was the only one to survive the plane crash. Um, and then he kind of started losing his mind, either from that or just from the war, and was abducted. Either I what I got from it, I don't know if he's claiming that he did actually get abducted by aliens and get sent to this um fictional planet of Tralfamador. I think that's how it's pronounced. Or if he's just losing his mind and imagining that he did. But again, nonetheless, great book. Totally recommend it. Um, I haven't read anything else. I have Galapagos and can't remember the other book I have from him, but I have two Kurt Vonnegut books besides this one that I'm planning on reading. And again, a great 20th century writer. So, and the very last book that I have finished, well, right, like I said, technically didn't finish, but Count of Monte Cristo. Now, this could possibly be my favorite book of all time. I will say there is good fluff right around here that is not that it's not needed. I think it is needed, but it can get a little boring because it's very just like dialogue based, not a lot of crazy action or anything going on. But once you hit like page like 900, you start getting back into it. It gets really really good. And I'm kind of not doing it as like oh chore just so I can like you know be like oh I finished kind of Monte Cristo. I'm actually like really really hooked in back into it now, which is awesome. Um, Characters are very good. Again, with this one, I will say definitely go online and look up Count of Monte Cristo character tree because characters go all over the place. Their names are different. Different characters call other characters different names depending on which character is what, depending on the setting, and it kind of jumps around in years too. I mean, it's chronological order, but the main character in the beginning of in the first couple chapters, he's 19, I believe, or 20, and then and then toward like the middle of the book, he's in his early 30s for pretty much the rest of the book. So it jumps around a bit. I mean, it doesn't jump around, but I'm saying like it goes over the course of like 10 or 12 years or so. But a great book. Um, yeah. So I'm on. Let's see what page am I on. I'm on page 1079, and I got about a little less than 200 pages, probably about 170, 180 pages maybe left. So I'm trying to finish it before I go on vacation next week. Um, so that's something I'm trying to do. But that being said, that is the last book that I've read so far this year. Now, there are other books that I've read, just I DNF'd them. Or I'm still currently reading them and I'm going back to them in the future because I may have certain points when, especially when I was in a slump, I was kind of maybe um, picked up too many books to start at at the same time. I'm usually reading at least 2 to 3 books at a time. Um, Not that I read from those 2 or 3 books every single day. Like yesterday, I read just The Count of Monte Cristo because I'm trying to finish it. But um, I have 2 different Buddhism books that I'm kind of reading. One of them's like a really small, like kind of like this size, same publisher. It's just a different book. So that I usually carry around with me when I'm like in my back pocket or something. Especially if I'm like going somewhere. And it's just good. I can just read like a small little chapter for like 10, 20 pages, and then so that I'm reading. I have an Introduction to Buddhism book I'm reading as well, and then I'm reading Food of the Gods by Terence McKenna. Um, and that is actually probably my first anthropology book I'm reading, if it's considered anthropology. So I'm reading that currently as well. Is there another book? Oh, I'm reading Bukowski as well. It's just a compilation of a bunch of shorter stories that he's written. But again, great writing. I have another Bukowski book I ordered because I'm reading this book and I like it so much. Um, that again, eventually I do plan on reading within the next couple months. But yeah, that is gonna be it for this video. Um, yeah, I'm gonna try and think of some other video ideas to try and do. I definitely want to try at least see if I can do at least maybe 2 or 3 a month. That would be awesome. I just need to try and think of video ideas and really just sit down and actually do them. But other than that, that is going to be it. Um, I'm going to try and throw my other social medias in the description. I don't post a lot on my Instagram or TikTok, but I might, so you can go ahead and follow me if you want to. And then yeah, um, don't know when my next video is going to be up. Hopefully within the next couple weeks, but yeah, just keep reading. If you got any book recommendations based off of what I've already read, go ahead, drop them in the comments. Um, I'm constantly buying books, so yeah, deuces.